All right. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining today's webinar, Internet of Things, the New Security Frontier. Throughout today's session, David Coleman, who's our Director of Product Marketing, is going to be covering a few key topics, including an overview of IoT and applicable security risks, policy strategies of IoT security, IoT security monitoring via cloud management, as well as an intro to Extreme IoT Essentials. Before I pass it over to David in a minute, I just want to cover a couple housekeeping items before we kick things off. Everyone is in listen-only mode, so if you do have questions, just be sure to submit those via the Q&A button, and we'll either be able to answer those near the end of today's session, or we'll follow up with you after the session to sync up on that. If you have any technical issues, just utilize the chat box, and we'll be able to help you out. And lastly, this session is being recorded, so you will all receive an on-demand version, which will be available within the next 24 hours after the webinar concludes. So with that, David, you can take it away.
Thanks very much, Kyle. And I want to thank everybody for once again taking the time out of your day to be here. I know that in today's, where we're all kind of stuck at home, that there's kind of like webinar overload these days. You have, you don't know which ones to attend, but we do appreciate you attending this one as well as the previous ones. This is actually the third in a series of webinars that we've done in the last month about network analytics and essential applications available via the cloud. And today the topic is Internet of Things, the new security frontier, which is actually a term I like to use. So let's go ahead and get started. If you don't know who I am, my name's David Coleman. I'm Director of Product Marketing at Extreme Networks. Been a Wi-Fi guy for a long time, and there's my Twitter address. I'm always looking for more followers. People usually make fun of me about that because promoting my tweet address, but that being said, the Wi-Fi and networking community in general is actually very active on Twitter. So we share a lot of information with each other. I'm also the co-author of this big, fat, vendor-neutral book about Wi-Fi, the Certified Wireless Network Administrator Study Guide. The 6th edition of it is actually coming out in 2 weeks. It can be so the little shameless plug here is that you can pre-order it on Amazon. This is not an extreme book. This is a vendor-neutral book about it's about 1,000 pages. It also makes a nice booster seat for your kids. And it's a vendor-neutral book about anything and everything to do with Wi-Fi. So there you go. So the agenda for today is I'm going to discuss IoT. We'll have an overview of IoT security risks. I'm going to talk about some of the strategies and solutions that we provide here at Extreme Networks. I'm certainly going to talk about where cloud plays into all this when it comes to IoT security and monitoring. And I'm going to give you an introduction to a new application that is available at no extra cost in our Extreme Cloud IQ management solution called Extreme IoT Essentials. And then we'll have a wrap up in a Q&A. So first, IoT Basics. Okay, so everybody knows what IoT is, hopefully. It's the Internet of Things, right? So it refers to any unattended endpoint that is connected to your network. These can be wired, they can be wireless. A lot of them are wireless, but it can be anything. It can be security cameras, medical devices like MRI machines and infusion pumps in the healthcare industry, in the manufacturing industry. It can be network sensors and assembly line tools. There's many kinds of IoT devices. As I mentioned, there's wired, lots of wireless. They can use Wi-Fi, cellular, even satellite connected. Low energy IoT is quickly emerging due to the due to the longer battery life that these IoT devices require. So Bluetooth and BLE have become much, much more popular technologies for IoT, RF technologies for IoT in recent years. As well as Thread might be being used for smart building implementations. There's literally like 9 different RF technologies that can be used for IoT. everything can be connected, and that's what Internet of Things is all about. Now, that being said, I always like to talk about something I remember from over 20 years ago when I was in networking, before Wi-Fi even, and there was this big initiative to get everything in your home connected to the internet via Ethernet. And the thinking was, this was pre-Wi-Fi, the thinking is that everybody was going to hardwire their homes in every room, and so you could run an Ethernet cable to your dishwasher, and then you could control it over the internet, or your refrigerator. And that was a big initiative that a lot of vendors got behind, and it failed miserably. And you know why it failed miserably? Is nobody wanted to wire their homes. But you know what? But the whole thing was everything was going to have an IP address, but it failed miserably because cable's too expensive, right? And however, wireless technologies have certainly changed that. They brought that whole initiative to back to life in a different way. Just about anything and everything comes equipped with some sort of wireless radio these days. I mean, they put them in sneakers, for Lord's sake. I mean, you can have a radio in your clothes. Radios, and I'm not just talking about home stuff too, like thermostats and things like that. In the enterprise, they're putting radios, whether they're Wi-Fi or BLE, in a lot of different devices. So, you know, I always like to talk about the consumerization of IT. A lot of the IoT type wireless technologies start at home, like the doorbells and the thermostats, but it's certainly spreading in huge numbers to the enterprise as well. The boom is happening as we speak. Gartner currently predicts that over 25 billion connected devices, IoT devices, by the end of this year. So let's talk a little bit about what an IoT architecture looks like. So it consists of a lot of things, IoT things, sensors, controllers, which are basically the IoT objects themselves. I mean, a chair could be an IoT object if it had a radio in it. Then you have an IoT gateway. So the role of the gateway is to translate the protocols from the IoT devices to the protocols so they can connect to your IP network and into the cloud as well. The other important function of that stage is to digitize and aggregate the data from the endpoints. And then the third layer is called the edge IT. This is your wiring closet, your Wi-Fi network, or your servers or micro data centers that may need to be pushed to the edge. So depending on the industry or the size of your IoT deployment, the IoT gateway functionality could be built into a simple Wi-Fi home router or enterprise Wi-Fi APs with multiple IoT protocols. But if you are in the industrial, transportation, or energy space, just as examples, you might be likely to have two separate devices plus a layer of compute. After that, the data is transferred to the data centers, which can either be local, on premises, or cloud-based to where the actual data that is collected is stored. And moving forward in the future, the true power will always be in the cloud, and we'll talk more about that. Okay, so let's talk about the main reason we're here, and that is IoT security threats. So we'll talk about, I have like 3 or 4 slides just to talk about IoT security threats. We could spend a whole day talking about all the different IoT attacks, but some of the common deployment limitations really expose how the whole concept of IoT security really is. If you look at this quote from Dark Reading, it shows that although we are well underway with IoT deployments, we still got a long way to catch up with IoT security. The thing that a little phrase that I kind of just started using back last fall is I like to say, IoT is the new security frontier. It is really wild, wild west. And I'm not just talking about this thermostat right here, but any kind of IoT device, whether it's a Nest thermostat or something enterprise-based, and whether it's Wi-Fi radio or wired, or some other RF wireless technology, they are all new entry points at the access layer into your network. And the problem is these typically aren't protected very well. Technology research firm, the 650 Group, estimates that by 2025, the number of wireless IoT devices that will be connected to the internet will be 59 billion worldwide. That's far exceeding the 28 billion number of PCs, tablets, and smartphones that are currently connected devices. And now traditionally, a lot of Wi-Fi IoT devices, as we know, traditionally they use weak security. A lot of IoT devices don't use 802.1x. At best, they have PSK security if they're secured at all. So that's a completely different topic, quite frankly, is how, especially if it's a Wi-Fi device, is what level of security you're going to use. But additionally, you should understand it's not just Wi-Fi IoT devices. As I mentioned, IoT threats extend well beyond Wi-Fi. So all wireless IoT devices are potential entry points into an enterprise network, and that includes Bluetooth, BLE, IoT devices, and other IoT devices using other RF technologies. So one of the biggest threats with IoT devices has been ransomware. Okay, so you can see in this funny little cartoon right here is your entire kitchen is blackmailing you and holding you for ransom via IoT. Well, so ransomware attacks seem to be on the rise. Malicious actors love ransomware due to the relatively low execution costs and the high rates of return that they get. You know, they lock you out of your own network, and then they blackmail you and say, if you want your data, if you want your stuff, pay up. And it's kind of sad how often people will pay up, both in the enterprise and also consumers. So although although ransomware typically impacts computer systems, IoT devices are becoming more vulnerable, and it can be devastating effects. And in addition to impacting the data within the devices, you can have it stolen, and usually ransomware very often involves encrypting your data and then being held for ransom. So once again, this is a big, ransomware has become a big security threat from computer systems in general, but IoT, because they are very easy entry points into your network, very often the ransomware malware finds its way through your toaster. Now, that being said, here's a sampling of some of the IoT vulnerabilities and exploits. Now, I could read off all of these attacks. We don't have time for all of these attacks, but these are just some of the bigger documented ones that have been known and you might have heard some press about. You can do a simple Google search and research on your own. I'll just talk about one or two of them. You've probably all heard about WannaCry. It's a great example of the intersection between ransomware and IoT. Of all types of ransomware out there, the one people are most familiar with is probably WannaCry. According to Wikipedia, WannaCry is estimated to have affected more than 200,000 computers across 150 countries, with damages, in the millions to billions in terms of cost. Although it was detected in May of 2017, it's 3 years later, it's 4 years later, it's still out there. And in the US alone. So, and a lot of them were hospitals that were victims of that attack. So the healthcare industry in particularly was hit hard with WannaCry. And the entry point in a lot of cases was medical IoT devices that aren't secured very well. In the interest of time, I'm not going to talk about every single one of these attacks. You can learn about other IoT attacks like Snake and Ripple, but just know that there's many, and there will be more in the future. And once again, IoT devices, they're low-hanging fruit, and that's why there's a lot of bad guys out there, unfortunately, and they always go for the low-hanging fruit. Okay. So what I'd like to do is, even though this is kind of a little bit of thought leadership, I do want to talk where our play comes into this, because we have a lot of different ways that we handle IoT security here at Extreme Networks, but we'll also talk about this in general as well. So Extreme and IoT security. Before we hit that, let's talk a little bit about Gartner's 3 tiers of IoT security: device cataloging, network segmentation, and network traffic analysis. So bottom line is the first thing you do to get a full and complete view of excuse me, a full and complete view of devices connecting to your network. So having the tools to go out there and discover and classify your IoT devices, and we'll talk more about that, is make sure you know exactly what kind of IoT device that it is. And additionally, then putting in some sort of proper authentication solution. And that's where a lot of this is weak in IoT, because they don't have strong authentication security. Once the devices have been categorized, or classified, they can be corporate owned, they can be BYOD devices, some could be business critical, some determine, especially on the business side of IoT devices, what kind of security policies you apply to them. And that's where network segmentation becomes important. You want to segment and segregate those IoT devices, not just from your other users on your enterprise network, but also from each other. And this will help, minimize a lot of the attacks. So if one segment gets attacked, and you can lock it down if possible. And then, of course, the third and final recommendation is to make sure you have some sort of network traffic analysis and anomaly detection. That's important because according to Verizon data breach survey, 60% of reported breaches took months or longer to even discover. And having the tools where you can see the IoT application flow data and perform analysis either manually or preferably automatically will help you detect anomalies and traffic patterns to ensure that those breaches are detected like that, and then you can shut things down and minimize the damage. And where that becomes powerful, once again, on that network traffic analysis is when we start talking about cloud. Okay, so we have a lot of different solutions here at Extreme. We have a cloud management solution called Extreme Cloud IQ with best-in-class device fingerprinting and all kinds of analytics we'll talk more about. We have secure IoT solutions, both NAC solutions, as well as an overlay IoT onboarding solution that we're going to talk about to provide the authentication and and also a little bit of the segmentation. You might have heard, if you're familiar, Extreme's a big switching company. I'm sure a lot of you that are customers that might be familiar with Extreme. You know about our fabric story, our segmented fabric. We'll talk more about that. And then you also need to secure the airwaves in terms of detecting wireless IoT attacks. And where that comes into play is WIPs. And we'll talk more about all these from both a high-level perspective and also what products we may have to help you out with that. So as I mentioned, a big part of this is classifying and identifying your IoT devices. So there are big databases out there that can do classification, third-party databases. We actually have it integrated into our Extreme Cloud IQ platform. Now, this example isn't an IoT device. I didn't have time to put in an example of an IoT device. This is actually an example of classifying a Galaxy Samsung device. But bottom line is, there's, as I previously mentioned, it's important to detect, discover, and classify IoT devices. So you can then put the proper security policies in place, and then segment those devices. At Extreme Networks, we use multiple device fingerprinting methods to classify our IoT device, and it's also natively built into a couple of our NAC solutions as well as our cloud management solution. Most device fingerprinting methods start simple with MAC address OUI matching as a first level of device fingerprinting. For example, the OUI address matching is a simple method of distinguishing manufacturers of monitoring equipment for medical equipment, such as Siemens or Masimo. Okay, but it gets a lot more detailed than that. So we use advanced strategies such as looking at the HTTP user agent information. DHCP fingerprint analysis is very, very important too. It's a very way to help determine the different OSs and types of devices. And then there can be other ways of IoT device fingerprinting methods such as SNMP, TCP scanning, and also proprietary methods. And so we have integrated an enormous fingerprinting database into our cloud management solution as well as our cloud NAC solution. You know, we actually have a kind of really unique solution that you've probably heard me talk about in other webinars, and that is our private pre-shared key solution. It is a wireless security solution. So this is a great solution for wireless IoT, wireless Wi-Fi IoT device, where device has a pre-shared key security credential. Many IoT devices simply do not support 802.1x, period, the Wi-Fi ones, but they'll support a static PSK. We've done some research on this, and in the healthcare industry specifically, it's amazing, like literally like 60% of the medical gear equipment that has Wi-Fi radio in it is still using a static PSK. And that's a huge risk simply from social engineering attacks. So our private pre-shared key solution gives every device a unique pre-shared key and unique authentication credentials. And it's perfect for IoT devices, especially if they don't support 802.1x. It's a great solution for healthcare patient monitoring equipment that might be connected via Wi-Fi. Now, moving on, I want you to look at all the healthcare internet providers, or I should say, healthcare Internet of Thing companies. That's a big list right there. And a good portion of those companies, you know, I'm not going to pick on any of them, but a lot of them, especially their older equipment, probably does not support 802.1x. And 802.1x isn't very easy to deploy with IoT devices anyway, due to the certificates and that capability. So that's why Extreme's private pre-shared key provides simplicity with a lot of the same type security as 802.1x, but you're not having to deal with the complexity of like 802.1x certificates. So bottom line is, in this example here, I could have 3 infusion pumps. They all have unique authentication credentials. And so much like 802.1x, when PPSK clients have that unique credentials, if a device is lost or maybe an infusion pump is stolen or it's compromised, that individual credential gets changed, and you don't have to change everything because it's not a static credential. And then you don't have to deal with, once again, the hassle of dealing with certificates. PPSK, you should know, on the wireless side for IoT, it not only provides you unique authentication credentials, but a very important part is it provides you unique authentication visibility in Extreme Cloud IQ. And that's very, very important. And you can't get that with any kind of static credential. So whatever access control you're using, I just gave one example for wireless Wi-Fi devices. You need to put into place, you know, an authentication solution. So maybe you're using 802.1x. security for a wired or wireless device, or it could be our PPSK. But once you're authenticated, we need to control what resources a device has access to. So the goal is to create a zero trust environment. Zero trust assumes that, attackers could be both intentional or non-intentional, and both outside your network, or the thing that a lot of people forget is inside your network. So zero trust assumes that those attackers could be anywhere, basically, and they could be machines. So zero trust basically means no user, device, person, or machine is automatically trusted. That's what it means. And access needs to be controlled within the perimeter of the network. So from an access control perspective, unlike users, IoT devices generally have a constrained number of hosts to which they communicate with. So it's important to lock down that communication with some sort of whitelist profile where all traffic is denied. And so example, using an MRI machine communicates with an imaging server, and that's the only thing it should be able to do. So you're going to have some sort of important policy that's applied for that device, MRI device, from layers 2 through 7, that basically, it can get to the imaging server, but it can't get anywhere else on the network. So Extreme offers multiple powerful network access control technologies. We offer Extreme Control, which is available as an on-premises NAC solution. We also offer Extreme Cloud NAC, which is a cloud NAC management solution in our Extreme Cloud management platform. And we also have an IoT security overlay solution called Extreme IoT Essentials that we're going to talk about towards the end of this presentation. Now, once again, I talked about the zero trust and the security policies, but I want to take that a step further. Segmentation. So there's some good numbers right there. Today, only 1% of companies have a segmentation strategy. By 2023, we hope that 30% will have a segmentation strategy. And companies that segment will have, 25% fewer attacks. It takes about 3 months, supposedly, it can take as fast as 3 minutes to hack into an IoT device, but it can be many, many months to discover that breach. So segmenting the network and breaking it up into many virtual private networks is important, and IoT is accelerating that requirement of segmentation. Once again, the idea behind segmentation is containing that breach or containing malware or virus to a small section of your network, so it doesn't propagate across everything. So and that's the whole point. Okay, and we have multiple segmentation solutions. One is our Fabric technology. So let's talk about segmenting IoT on the wired network. The problem with segmenting the network today, it's very complex and overall manual process. We know that you can't put all IoT devices on a single VLAN. That's not secure. And many organizations are concerned with the complexity associated with putting different types of IoT devices in separate VLANs, since it requires a lot of configuration all the way to your backbone. And this encompasses keeping track of ACL rules to control access to those VLANs, and on and on and on. So as networks have become more mobile and dynamic, this approach is not working quite as well, especially on the wired side of things. So overlay tunnels such as GRE or IPsec are an alternative approach, but then you still have to manage the overlay and the underlay, and then you have to deal with having to support all the tunnels. So our Fabric technology has been extremely popular with our customers on the switching side, especially in the healthcare vertical. Fabric Connect is an extreme networking technology that allows us to deliver simple, secure, and scalable network segmentation automatically. I hate to say the word automatically, but I just did. In fact, one of the key reasons that organizations deploy our technology is the hypersegmentation it provides. And hypersegmentation refers to the ability to deploy network segments with far greater ease than any other technologies. So bottom line is we have inherent security attributes within our technology that is kind of stealth in nature. In fact, we carry traffic in Ethernet switch paths across the backbone, means that our topology is not discoverable upon common IP scanning tools, and which really limits the ability for lateral movement. Our security network segments are elastic and they extend and retract on demand. So when an IoT device is plugged, disconnects from an edge switch port, that configuration is removed dynamically, and that port eliminating a backdoor for other entry points. So it really is kind of, I hate to say the words plug and play, but that's kind of what it is. We validated the inherent security of this technology in multiple public and private hackathon events so far. So far, it's proven unbreachable to date. But that doesn't mean you never say never in the security industry. But I encourage you, post this webinar, especially for potential switching customers, to learn more about our fabric technology. What about segmenting the wireless network? Well, Extreme's user profiles enables wireless segmentation with a single SSID. And yeah, we're not the only company that can do this, but this has long been a thing that you can do with leveraging 802.1x radius attributes, for example. So you can have a single SSID and then put different devices into different VLANs, for example. Well, we take it a step further. Not only can you have a different single SSID where you could have different types of IoT devices be assigned to different VLANs, but also different stateful firewall policies, okay? Layer 2 through layer 7. So you can segmentation between IoT devices while all connected to the same SSID. I want to add too that you don't need 802.1x for this, because I just mentioned earlier that on the wireless side, not a lot of IoT devices still support 802.1x. Any kind of segmentation that you can do with 802.1x and radius attributes to put them in different VLANs and firewall policies, we can do with our private pre-shared key solution as well. So you could have one private pre-shared key SSID and different types of IoT devices all connected to the same SSID, but being dumped in different VLANs and different firewall policies being applied for each one. And it's all enforced at the edge too, because it's enforced right at the APs where the layer 2 through 7 policies are enforced. Now, speaking of wireless and IoT, it's important to secure the airwaves. 48% of businesses admit they have been unable to detect IoT security breaches on their network. So that's where intrusion detection comes into play. And so it's an important part of your overall IoT security strategy. Now, because most devices are connecting via Wi-Fi, WIPS should be an important component, wireless intrusion prevention system, of a multi-layered defense and detection strategy. Now, it's not only a critical tool to protect for IoT devices, but any kind of Wi-Fi device. And one of the things that I was very happy about when I came to work for Extreme Networks is air defense. And anybody that's heard me talk before, air defense is without a doubt the best of breed WIP solution out there. And we're continuing to make strides in this, and IoT is a big part of it. Air defense also provides forensic analysis that allows administrators to retrace the actions of any single wireless LAN device back down to the minute, including IoT devices. And a big important thing too is, as I just mentioned, the forensic analysis allows the administrator to retrace the actions. So we were talking earlier about a lot of times it's hard to pinpoint the time of an IoT attack. Having that timeline forensic analysis is very, very important. Now, IoT is the new security frontier. And it's not just wired, and it's not just Wi-Fi. Lots of other RF technologies are being used for IoT devices. And one of the most prevalent RF technologies being used for Wi-Fi, for wireless IoT devices is Bluetooth and BLE. Okay. Now there's other technologies, but the cool news is this. Back last year in our intrusion prevention solution, Air Defense, we've added monitoring for BLE attacks. There are 4 billion BLE devices were enabled just in the year 2008. So we've added those kind of attacks and monitoring capabilities for BLE into our air defense solution, and now provide that kind of visibility, not just for Wi-Fi attacks, but also for Bluetooth and BLE, and to help you also identify those attacks, monitor those attacks, and mitigate those threats for both Wi-Fi and BLE. And and that's, I think, significant because, once again, I want to remind everybody, IoT is not just Wi-Fi. Okay. All right. So, what is the future for IoT and security? Well, obviously, you knew I was going to say cloud, because you know what, the cloud's the future pretty much for everything with networking. I think we all kind of know that. And if you're not, if you don't have a public cloud or a private cloud or an on-premises cloud solution, it's not a matter of when, it's if, it's a matter of when. Our cloud solution is called Extreme Cloud IQ, and we are the #2 cloud networking company in the world, and growing and grabbing market share daily. But what's important about the cloud is the fact it's all about the data. As opposed to an on-premises solution, a cloud allows you to collect just massive amounts of data that you can analyze for your network. And quite frankly, you can also leverage analytics of other people's data too, even though that's all anonymized. The cloud is going to change interpretation of IoT analytics data simply because of the power of the cloud. Will change. You need massive amounts of data if you're going to have effective anomaly detection. Okay. Our current cloud solution, Extreme Cloud IQ, ingests telemetry from anywhere of about over 5 petabytes of traffic every day from all our customer networks, and that's growing. So just to explain what that means, 1 petabyte of data is equal to over 13 years of high definition video. So every day our cloud analyzes and crunches numbers on behavioral patterns of the data equivalent of 66 years of high definition video. And a big component of a lot of that data is IoT. So data science and machine learning algorithms are applied to these large data sets to drive more accurate and high performance data insights into your system. Definitely going to make anomalies better. And, we could go down a lot of examples, but, just how about a wired, let's just say a wired IoT device that is maybe even installed on the wall, okay? And all of a sudden we notice on a heat map or something that thing's moving. Well, it's not supposed to move. That's an anomaly. And then you can use the machine learning algorithms to detect it like that. And then you can automate that as well to blacklist said device. That's just one example. So other examples would certainly be anomalies in application traffic patterns that are specific to individual types of IoT devices. So if you see different kind of traffic going from an MRI machine that's not supposed to be browsing the web, it's only supposed to be going to that imaging server, that's an anomaly and it can be detected immediately. Having the cloud to crunch the numbers on that can make that detection and take actions a lot faster. Okay, moving on. With that, I kind of getting to the heart of the matter. One of the main things I kind of invited everybody here for is very excited about another one of our new essential applications that we've added into Extreme Cloud IQ, and give you an introduction to Extreme IoT Essentials. So we have recently added this new overlay application, but integrated it into our cloud solution. So Extreme IoT Essentials is a simple IoT security solution that's designed to protect high-risk wired IoT devices. And through application of security profiles, we can control the attachment of wired IoT devices to your network, and it locks down those IoT communications. Some of the features it includes, very quickly, simplified workflow for securing wired IoT devices. And you're going to see it's tied to our wall plate APs. It's complementary to your existing security infrastructure, but a key point is that an admin doesn't have to be involved in this other than the initial setup. Non-technical staff, say like a healthcare or a hospital, can securely onboard IoT devices simply by plugging them in to a wired port. This can be deployed over any network infrastructure without any network changes. So there are multiple components to our Extreme IoT Essentials solution. There's the cloud, obviously, for the data collection. There's your IoT devices, like in this, we're using healthcare as an example, MRI devices. And then you have, for the cloud access to all this, we can define very specific access roles where assigned floor staff, say like a hospital, can protect the IoT devices without burdening IT resources. So simple drop-down menus for floor staff to apply the predefined profiles to these devices. We call it an application operator, which is basically a role-based access control role, so they can do one thing, and that's onboard these wired IoT devices. It's secure by default. All the wired ports are in a protected mode, so when a device is connected to the network, it starts with a deny all mode until the security profile has been applied to that specific device. So just to give you an example right here, an unauthorized device plugs into the AP. The access to the network is blocked and reported. Also we can detect, like I said, anomalies. We detect anomalies on like an MRI machines. We can blacklist it. And another use case is infusion pumps. I like to use that as a good example because those things move around a lot, and the IT guys don't have time to secure the individual ports as they're moving around, but the staff could do it very, very simple as they're moving forward. So this leverages our wall plate AP, the AP150W. It's a small form factor. It's a Wi-Fi 5 access point. But the key here is the 4 managed gigabit ports. So you can, by the way, you can still do PPSK with this thing as well, but it effectively functions as a gateway device for Extreme IoT Essentials for wired IoT devices. Now, and when the devices are plugged in based on the policies that you have pre-configured or the staff is pre-configured for certain kinds of IoT devices, different types of IoT devices in our IoT Essentials application is they get assigned to a very specific VLAN and very specific firewall policies right there at the edge apply to this port based on the type of device that it is. The other thing you should know too is we have, we just came out last week with our 302W wall plate. This isn't supported yet in Extreme IoT Essentials, but it will be in a very, very soon. And I'm very excited about this because it's also a great Wi-Fi device. It's a 2x2x2 dual radio Wi-Fi 6, 802.11ax Wi-Fi. And it's the industry's first wall plate AP that has dual 5 gigahertz capabilities. So that's pretty cool. But once again, for the Extreme, it will be a gateway for Extreme IoT Essentials. That is coming soon. And so it'll be very easy for like hospital staff to plug in very certain types of IoT devices, and policies will automatically be assigned to them, very specific VLANs and very specific firewalls based on the type of devices. Now, one thing I didn't mention, I'm just going to go back a couple of slides, is there's also analytics built into this as well. So there's a lot of analytics built into this applications from an IoT perspective and IoT application perspective that can be seen visible in the app as well. Okay. So and then the last thing I want to say about the 302W wall plate that just debuted this week, it supports multiple Essentials applications. And what do I mean by that? Well, IoT Essentials is just one of multiple essential applications that we have added into the cloud. So here's the cool news. We've added 4 applications into Extreme IQ that we view as essential to your network management. Extreme Cloud IQ Essentials deliver network services to give you basically a complete portfolio of applications, including WIP security, locationing, a sophisticated access for guest users, and also the IoT device solution that we just mentioned. And I'm getting the best news of all. Really, is this: there's no extra cost for Extreme IoT Essentials or any of the other essential applications. These applications provided at no additional cost with what's called the standard pilot license. So with most other vendors, if you wanted an overlay IoT security solution, you got to pay extra. If you want to overlay WIP solution, you got to pay extra. If you want to overlay guest or a location solution, we have all 4 of these apps that we've added into our solution, cloud-based solution, and they're at no extra cost. And that's pretty darn cool. And of course, they also have a full-blown API for all 4 apps as well. Quickly, I don't want to spend a lot of time on all the apps, but because we've actually had separate webinars that kind of talk about all of them. But we have Air Defense Essentials, where we've taken you can see we're in the process of cloudifying a lot of our existing applications, including Air Defense Essentials. So we've in our cloud, we have a lot of the air defense components that are coming standard now in our cloud solution. We've added a complete and extremely robust solution for locationing purposes for both Wi-Fi and BLE, for tracking users, devices, and also proximity, some marketing purposes and asset tracking. We have a full-blown guest management solution that is integrated now, called Guest Essentials, and also includes guest analytics. Same thing with location, includes location analytics. And of course, now I've talked about the IoT Essentials. You want to learn more about Extreme IoT Essentials? Well, there's a demo video that my friend Rich Hunt recorded, and it's on YouTube. So there is the URL and also a QR code if you want to quickly hold up your phone and capture that QR code, and you can go watch that demo, or just do a search on Google for YouTube Extreme IoT Essentials, and it'll pop right up. And it'll take time to watch the 2-minute video, just so you can kind of get a feel and look of how it actually works. Okay, I guess I'm a little bit ahead here, so I guess we have some time for some questions. So Kyle, what you got for me? Any questions
a few questions came through for us, so we'll go ahead and get started here. So first one that was presented from our audience was, does Extreme IoT Essentials support all models of your access points?
No, actually. It supports our wall plate APs, and very specific ones. Initially, it supports the 150W, which has been our Wi-Fi 5 access point. But we just came out last week, literally last Friday, our new 802.11ax Wi-Fi 6 wall plate. That's also due 5 gigahertz, the AP32. The AP302W, okay? And that's coming, it's available now for purchase, but an integration into IoT Essentials is like, I don't want to give an exact date, but probably by the time very soon, okay? Very shortly. IoT security access policies are enforced at the edge using the wired ports of these wall plate APs. By the way, you can still use the Wi-Fi functionality of these wall plate APs as well. So, and finally, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned in this presentation, the AP302W will work with all 4 of our essential applications in the cloud. The Extreme Guest, the Extreme Location, the Air Defense Essentials, and the IoT Essentials. So it's quite a great AP, but the IoT Essentials does have dependencies on those 2 wall plate APs. Good question.
Awesome. Appreciate that, David. Next question here for you. Does PPSK work with Extreme IoT Essentials?
Well, not directly. As I just mentioned, IoT Essentials work specifically with 2 wall plate APs and to enforce security policies at the edge, and it's meant for wired IoT devices. Now, that being said, Extreme Cloud APs support private pre-shared key, which is a fantastic solution, security solution for authentication and segmentation, as I mentioned, for Wi-Fi IoT devices. So there's no reason that both solutions can be deployed very easily at the same time. And there's analytics for both, but they're in different places in the cloud. That's all.
Awesome. Appreciate that clarification there. Next question we got from our audience. Does Fabric work with the cloud APs as well as switches?
Okay, so, all right. So good question. Fabric Attach is a Fabric Connect feature that allows, it's a Fabric feature that allows Fabric to be extended to non-Fabric enabled devices like edge switches, for example, and APs and maybe even IP cameras. Fabric Attach works with, for example, our XOS switches and some of our wing access points, but not yet the cloud APs, which I think what the question was. So legal disclaimer here. Roadmap is always subject to change. So what I'm about to say could change, but you will be hearing soon more about our universal hardware platforms for various models of APs, meaning they can support 2 operating systems, the Wing OS and the Extreme Cloud Engine operating system that's on the cloud APs. And so with that capability, that does give you a play with those APs. It does give you a play for Fabric. It remains to be seen if we'll offer the Fabric Attach capability for both Wi-Fi operating systems.
Awesome. Thanks for all that detail there, David. Next question, it's a 2-part question. So first part here, does Air Defense detect BLE and Bluetooth attacks now?
Yeah, I mean, it detects them both now, BLE and Wi-Fi right now. So I mean, that was kind of the point. It's been the premier Wi-Fi WIP solution with over 300 signatures for Wi-Fi attacks, and we have most recently added BLE and Bluetooth detection attack signatures. I think something like 15 signatures. And you know that BLE is another big primary wireless technology that's used for IoT devices. You said there was another part to that question?
Yeah. The second part to that question was, what about other RF technologies like UWB or Thread or Zigbee?
Okay, so bottom line, we have the capability to monitor 2 RF technologies with WIPs right now, and I think we're ahead of our competitors right off the bat with that. And so the question was, will we monitor for attacks for other RF technologies like threats from other IoT devices? It's a fair question. It remains to be seen, but I'm not going to be committal. We are evaluating other RF technologies and whether we should monitor them for the future. So, but I think we have the 2 primary ones right now, but clearly we're evaluating other ones, and we'll see is the answer. How's that for a non-answer? So
awesome. Thanks, David. Next question we got here. Is Extreme's overlay IoT Defender solution connected to Extreme Cloud IQ?
Okay, so that must be a customer that's familiar with prior to Extreme IoT Essentials. We had an overlay solution called Defender for IoT, and we still sell that. And it uses one of these. I don't know if everybody can see this, but the policy enforcement is actually on one of these little devices right here, as opposed to the wall plate. That solution still exists, but the question is that connected to the cloud? Well, you should know that the AP150W and the 302W will function as defenders in policy enforcement devices for wired IoT devices with the IoT Essentials application that is at no extra cost with a pilot license in Extreme Cloud IQ. And those APs are managed by Extreme Cloud IQ. Now, the Defender for IoT, which might already be deployed in some existing healthcare customers, and these corresponding devices are only managed by Extreme Campus Controller. So, however, XCC visibility is available in Extreme Cloud IQ. So as you can tell, we're putting basically the whole portfolio in visibility. We have a path for visibility for our whole portfolio. So that means is that the legacy IoT Defender solution in itself is not part of IoT Essentials, but you can see that there's the bulk of our portfolio is migrating to the cloud. And we want that migration to be as seamless and frictionless as possible. And we want to protect our existing customers that are still using older solutions like IoT Defender. So I know that's a long answer, but the answer is there is a way for visibility for that old solution if you have XCC talking to the cloud. But the legacy IoT Defender solution itself is separate from IoT Essentials, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Cool. I think we'll squeeze in 2 more questions here before we wrap up at the top of the hour. So this one, with the IoT Essentials solution, is that protection just layer 4?
No, it's layers 2 through 7. So the whole gambit. I can't do layer 1. So maybe one day.
Cool. All right, and last question we'll present here. Is there an extra license and cost for the IoT analytics in the cloud?
No, and I probably didn't make that clear enough. That's kind of the beauty of all these new essential applications I've been talking about. They are part of Extreme Cloud IQ at no extra cost when using the standard pilot license. So you get Extreme Air Defense Essentials, Extreme Location Essentials, Extreme Guest Essentials, and now Extreme IoT Essentials. And I think and who knows, we may have more planned in the future. And no extra costs. That's the beauty of the cloud and having containerized architectures. We can quickly insert applications as part of the whole overall cloud management platform very simply and provide this extra value to our customers right off the bat without you having to use an overlay solution or B, a third-party service.
Awesome. Great. So I think we'll leave it at that for now. Anyone who didn't have their questions answered, we'll follow up with you after this webinar directly. Again, all attendees will receive the on-demand link within 24 hours, and you will also get a copy of the presentation. And David, you can go ahead and wrap up here.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to do, Kyle, was get a quick plug-in for 2 webinars we had in January. If you missed them, once again, Kyle and I were your host for these 2 webinars, and they're about very specific topics, but we also go into a little depth about some of the other extreme cloud essential applications. So here's the link and the QR code for one webinar that you can view on demand. It's called Wi-Fi and BLE Location 101, Location as a Service via the cloud. I'm absolutely blown away by what our product team has delivered. with this. And once again, at no extra cost. Most of our competitors offer similar solutions and charge you a lot of money. And then we had another one a couple weeks ago, and it's now available on demand. It's called Wi-Fi Guest of Honor, Guest Access and Analytics via the cloud. So same thing, a lot of guest management is done through third-party services or overlay solutions. We have a full-blown guest management and analytics solutions application that is now part of your standard pilot license. So put up your smartphone there, and you can, or just go to our website, and both of these webinars are available for viewing as well if you got a free hour of your time and you want to listen to me again. So with that, I want to thank everybody and also thank Kyle, and I hope we see everybody again soon.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Look out for that follow-up email within the next 24 hours, but appreciate you joining and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.